This is the Science Show with Dr. Dada. It's just so nice, you cannot do without. This is the Science Show with Dr. Dada. It's just so nice, you cannot do without.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Science Show with Dr. Dada on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting from the city of Glasgow. Today's show is going to be very, very interesting, as usual. And today we're going to be talking about how you can stay scientifically informed in the age of misinformation. Now, misinformation is something that we've probably heard a lot in conjunction with things like elections and fake news and the rest of it. But when it comes to staying informed in the knowledge of science and the developments in the science world, misinformation is also something to keep in mind. So today we're going to be having a very, very exciting set of items that we will enjoy. The first one will be a discussion of the question of the week, which is very much related to the topic. And the question of the week is, how can you stay scientifically informed in the age of misinformation? So how can you stay scientifically informed in the age of misinformation? And our lines will be open. You can contribute to the discussion by calling 0141 530 2787. That is 0141 530 2787. So when the time comes, the lines will be open and you can contribute to the discussion as well. Now, after the discussion, we're going to enjoy a talk that's very much related to this theme. And in fact, this talk was given less than 48 hours ago, and it's entitled Research Directions Reimagining the Scientific Journal. So this is talking about the channel through which you can get informed reliably about development in science. So this is something to look forward to. And then, of course, we'll have, as usual, some music breaks. We'll have some really nice, beautiful tracks to enjoy today. And at the end of the show, we'll be having actually an interview with the guest who delivered the talk. So this is a recorded interview, again, less than 48 hours ago. And so the guest today is Dr. Moniz, and she is the program manager for Research Directions. That's a new journal from Cambridge University Press. So she'll be telling us all about that and all about her journey in STEM as well. Okay, so as usual, we'd like to encourage you to keep listening to Jambo Radio. You can listen online and you can listen on air as well via DAB, so digital radio, whether you're in the car or wherever else you may be, you can enjoy our show. And with that, we will start the first section of our show for today. And that is the question of the week, the discussion of the question of the week. And the lines are open. So please do chip in, do call in. Just tell us how you're doing. Tell us about yourself and what you'd like to contribute to the question of the week. You can maybe give us some tips and some suggestions on how we can protect ourselves from scientific misinformation. So once again, the number to call is 0141 530 2787. That's 0141 530 2787. And the question under discussion is, how can you stay scientifically informed in the age of misinformation? Very good. So now, as we wait for your calls, so it's just important to realize the importance of this topic. So it's a critical skill, not just for knowing what's fake news when it comes to science, but in general. These days there's so much content out there. It's easy to get lost in the noise, and it's becoming more and more difficult to determine what's true and what's not, especially now with AI generating content, which is not always necessarily correct. So it becomes more and more difficult to tell what the truth is. So let's define, to start with, scientific misinformation. What does that actually mean? Well, it just refers to any misleading or false information presented as scientific fact. What makes it particularly difficult to distinguish between misinformation and actual scientific fact is that sometimes it's mixed with some truth. So there may be some element of truth in it, but that's where the misleading aspect comes in, isn't it? Sometimes it's a deliberate attempt to mislead, but sometimes it's an innocent mistake. It can stem from misinterpretation of scientific data or studies. So for example, if you pick up a scientific paper, and it's not in your field, it's easy to misinterpret or misunderstand the result and say, wow, this means that. And the result is then you tell someone else, and then the person tells someone else, and it kind of blows up into a false sort of spread of information. So that's something to keep in mind. So the question is, how do you shield yourself from such misinformation? There are a few things you can do. So perhaps one that you could mention is to check the source. Always verify the source. If someone tells you something, the scientists have discovered a new particle or whatever it may be, the first thing you want to do is, okay, right, that sounds good, but where is it published? What's the source? Who were the scientists? So those are the kind of questions that will lead you to protecting yourself from misinformation. Another point that you could, another sort of suggestion that you could apply is to make sure that you understand the evidence. Now that's a tricky one, especially if you're maybe not a scientist. It's not your thing. You're not working in STEM, and some of the evidence or even the facts are things that you don't completely understand. So that's a bit of a tricky one to do. But I think this is where you have to. The third point comes in, which is to seek the opinions of experts. So there are reliable sources, experts. For example, on our show, on the Science Show, we often interview experts in various fields. So that could be a nice opportunity to understand, and when they break it down in very simple terms, to understand what the evidence of these scientific discoveries are. Another thing is to beware of sensationalism. That's something that's easy to do. Sometimes headlines sound way too dramatic, and you might see declarations that seem too good to be true, and sometimes they may try to oversimplify the facts in an effort to make it understandable to the general public. And these things can lead to maybe even unintentionally lead to misinformation. And of course, you want to be skeptical. Be skeptical about everything, by all means. That's the way, that's the approach, that's the way to approach new information that will protect you even further. So have a critical mind and ask plenty of questions. Of course, another way to pursue that is to look at different sources. Look at additional sources of information to try to corroborate the facts from another source if possible. Fantastic. So that's just a few suggestions there on how to protect ourselves from misinformation. So what we'll do now is move into the next part of our show. We'll hear from Dr. Moniz, as advertised earlier. So this talk was given to an audience of experts at the University of Glasgow less than 48 hours ago, as mentioned earlier. It was part of the physics colloquium at the University of Glasgow in the School of Physics and Astronomy. Now, we would like to extend special thanks to the university and to Dr. Jörg Jorte for organizing the talk, and to the University of Glasgow and the School of Physics and Astronomy for hosting the visit of Moniz and for organizing the talk as well. So the talk is entitled Research Directions, Reimagining the Scientific Journal. So, of course, this is a very key aspect because, of course, scientific journals are the official way in which scientific discoveries are being communicated to the world, or to the public and to the scientific community. So this new journal is something that is quite exciting, the approach that they're using. So we'll hear all about that in Monica's talk. So let's listen to the first part of Monica's talk. And after that, we'll be right back.
So I'm Monica Moniz. I'm the Research Directions Program Manager and Publisher. And so what I thought I would talk to you today about is a little bit of the publishing landscape. Won't try to not bore you too much with that. And then I'll specifically talk about research directions and how that came about in that context of the current publishing landscape. So as I said, I'll give a brief overview of the changing landscape of publishing and how research directions came about. So I'll talk a little bit about how much publishing is now open access. I'll give a wider open research context, and then I'll talk about ensuring the importance of ensuring that what is published in journals is trustworthy. So just as a reminder, because I'm pretty sure you know this, but open access is about making scholarly research permanently available, but it's also about reusage. And it's also about redistribution and reusage and adapting the content. And that depends on what license the authors choose to publish with. So let's start with how much open access there is currently. So when I mean open access, I do mean articles that are published under a CC BY license that can be reused. So I don't mean just free to read. So that's the difference, right? So this data comes from Delta Think. So you can see in, what is that, salmon color, how much open access was published in 2022. And then 2023 is a bit of an estimate because it's still being calculated, and a projection for 2026. And you can see, and that this is defined by fields, and you can see that life sciences is still leading the way, but most fields are growing quite considerably. And if you look at the total, we were a little bit under 50% in 2022, but we'll be close to 60% overall by 2026. So it's not going away. It's where it's going. Even humanities and arts, which tends to be much lower, is almost at 50% by then. In terms of regions, so you can see there the line marking 50%. It's still not surprisingly being led by West Europe because it's where it's mostly highly funded and highly producing regions with more than 50% of its journal articles open access. USA and China are somewhat behind, given lack of mandates, but Delta Thinks predicts that both countries will be about 50% in 2026, based on current trends. Also, just because of the sheer size of their research outputs, they are already contributed substantially to global open access publishing. You can see there, and you might be surprised by South America and Brazil, and that tends to be because they publish a lot in diamond types of journals, which I can explain later if you want to. So what are these mandates, and what is the difference between Europe and North America? So looking at the most influential funders, the situation has evolved somewhat in the last years. So in August 2022, the US White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, so that's the OSTP, announced a new policy called, well, it was called at the time the Nelson Memo, and it called for free, immediate, and equitable access to federally funded research. It proposed that all peer-reviewed publications and data resulting from federally funded research grants be made available upon publication freely without embargo. A number of agencies have already posted their plans, including the National Science Foundation, which I show here. And although the Nelson Memo, on the face of it, brings the US closer to Europe, it's still not exactly the same. There's a bit of a difference. So the Nelson Memo focused on making research available to the American public, whereas Plan S, which is the European mandate, places an emphasis on making research available for the benefit of further research. And the emphasis is on free to the American public rather than open access. And there's the difference there with the type of reusage licenses. Publication costs can be included in NSF or NIH and other grants according to the implementation plans that we've seen so far, but this is not an open access mandate. It's slightly different. The other document on the slide called Towards Responsible Publishing is from Coalition S, which is the Plan S group of funders, which is largely based in Europe. Sorry, I got lost a little bit here. This was produced last October to initiate a consultation process about, in their words, how best to support the dissemination of research in a responsible, equitable, and sustainable way. While it is intended to be read as a challenge to traditional journals publishing and quite a criticism of the role of commercial publishers, it does set out some thought-provoking ideas. Its main themes, and this is important also to what I will talk about in research directions, is that the scholarly communication system should be scholar-led, that results should be available faster, that article processing charges are as much as a barrier for some researchers as subscription paywalls used to be, that peer review should be open, that all research outputs should be considered in research assessment, which is also important, and that career incentives should not be linked to publishing in highly selective journals. So that's their vision. Now, what's happening with Cambridge University Press? So this is quite a nice graph for me because that's more or less my career in publishing. So I entered publishing around 2017, and we were not publishing a lot of open access by then, as you can see. And by 2023, we're over 64%. That involved a lot of flipping. So that means that we took journals that were either subscription-based or hybrid, and we flipped it to open access. But it also meant launching new journals. So that's what we're doing at the press, and it shows that it's not going anywhere, and that it's our main principal publishing model. Right, but open access is not the whole story. We want to talk about open research, right? So open access lives within, as I said, it's not just about making research free to read, but it is about making it fully usable by other researchers and accessible to all. A number of principles and practices are in place that can help make this effective, and I've grouped them under two banners: transparency and reproducibility. So if we talk first about transparency, we can talk about a couple of themes that have appeared lately. So transparency is all about being clear and open about why and how research is conducted. So it's ensuring that the final published record isn't biased. One example is pre-registration. Sorry, I'm trying to read my notes. Pre-registration. Pre-registration is not new. It's been best practice in clinical trials for some time, so it was required by FDA since 1997. But the concept of registered reports is to take it a little bit further. So here, the research question and the methods are peer-reviewed before the results are known, and the results are published provided that the original plan was adhered to. This means that the final published paper can't be selective on the original hypothesis. This approach also supports the publication of all results provided that the research question was worth asking, even if the results were, let's call them, disappointing or not what it was expected or surprising. Sharing the full detail of research outputs, such as a full study, data, code, and software, and detailed protocols, allows anyone to scrutinize the work and makes an informed judgment on its value and validity. The availability of preprints and the publication of peer review reports also allows others to see how the final version of record has evolved. And finally here, ORCID identifiers, which you will be familiar with, you need to be unique and persistent, and these allow individual authors to be recognized, connecting them with their affiliations and their published work, and disambiguating confusable identities. So if we move on to reproducibility, a lot of the practices also help with transparency, right? They kind of feed each other. But the principle is that findings can be validated by someone else using the same methodology, or analysis can be replicated by someone looking at the same data. So this means that others need access to the full methods, protocols, software, code used in the original study. So I don't know if you're familiar with the FAIR data, but that means that data should be not only available, but findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So that's what FAIR means. Now, we were just having lunch before, and we were discussing all the problems of publishing, and so I'll mention some of them here. As scholarly journals took the form that we recognize today, peer review became the process by which the published research was validated. There has always been a huge element of trust in this process. So we trust that most participants are who they say they are. We trust that most participants are intentionally deceptive, that most participants aren't biased, and that everyone has an equal chance to be fairly treated. However, there's no doubt that malpractice is increasing. We and other publishers are seeing a considerable increase in the number and complexity of cases that we advise on. This increase is partially because we're all better at detecting it, but it also is increasing just on its own. Why is it increasing? There's immense pressure to publish. I am preaching to the choir here, you will know that. This leads to some individual for desperate solutions. There's increasingly sophisticated technology that allows the faking of outputs, such as image manipulation and the use of AI to create content. And because organizations, of which paper mills are one example, take advantage of the willingness of, I'm going to call them desperate authors, to pay to get published. Paper mills, you will know, I hope, that are sophisticated setups that sell authorship on academic papers. This can be real research, or it can be entirely fabricated, or sometimes a combination of the two. Often these organizations infiltrate peer review operations in various ways to ensure publication. Increasingly, peer review is criticized for not identifying malpractice, but while peer review can be below standard or in predatory journals, it can even be skimpy at best, it's not designated, it's not designed, to identify fraud or deception. Those of you here who are peer reviewers, your role is to assess the quality and relevance of an article for a journal. It shouldn't rest on you to identify that people are who they are, or that the real author of the paper is who they say they are. You can't identify from a single paper. You need a setup for that. So there's automated tools and processes, and even potentially applications of AI are now being developed to help publishers identify this malpractice. Publishers and others are coming together to address challenges such as Unite to Act, which is a group of publishers, universities, and others to tackle paper mills. The transparency good practice that I mentioned earlier is going to be increasingly important, validating trustworthiness of published research. And finally, we all need to take responsibility to correct the literature clearly and promptly, whether problems arose because of malpractice or error. So this was a very quick stop of what the current environment is, and what has inspired us to do something slightly different.
Thank you very much, Monica, for that. That's a really great talk. So we'll just pause it right there. So that first part of the talk, of course, gives us some insight into how publishing in the scientific world works, how scientific research is disseminated, and the various processes and parties that are involved. And this is really good to listen to and to understand, because the more that we understand that, how everything works, the better equipped we'll be to judge the reliability of different types of information that we see in this area. So that's really great. Now we're going to take a music break, and we're going to be listening to a really nice song. It's by Thames and it's entitled Damages. And after that, we'll continue with Monica's talk. We'll be right back. Yes, that was Thames. That was Damages by Thames. And this is the Science Show with Dr. Dada on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting from the city of Glasgow. And today we've been listening to a talk from the Research Directions Program Manager and Publisher from Cambridge University Press. Her name is Dr. Moniz. And she's been telling us about their new journal. Now, we're going to listen to the second part of the talk, where we really look at the description of this Research Directions journal itself. And with that, we'll listen to the second part of the talk.
So at the press, we wanted to take the next step. So if we were today reinventing the science journal, how would we start again? So we thought that we wanted to be led by questions and hypotheses. We wanted to better mirror how researchers respond as they do their work. We wanted to be experimental, so we're still trying things and seeing if they work. We wanted to work with our communities, so we've identified some communities which were willing to experiment with us, namely quantum technologies. But we know that this does not suit every field, and some fields are very happy of how traditional journals work. So how is Research Directions, the program of journals, different? It all starts with a question set up by either the journal editors or by the wider community and vetted by our advisory council. And we have different questions depending on the journal that we are talking about. So I think everyone in the audience is from quantum technologies, is that right? I also have some bioelectronics questions and cyber-physical questions if you're interested in that, but I won't stay on them if you're not interested. So in terms of quantum technologies, which is the journal led by Daniel Oye, I'll just go through the questions that we've published. So I just wanted to clarify that a question, it acts in two fronts. It is a paper in itself. So it's like an editorial where the author of the question explains why that particular question is important for the community, but it also opens a call for papers for authors to respond to that question. So published currently, we have questions in the Quantum Technologies Journal. We have questions such as, what are the full capabilities of relativistic quantum cryptography? This journal really challenges my English. How do we quantify the utility of quantum algorithms? One about micro and nano fabrication in new quantum technologies, and one that is getting a lot of attention on how quantum technologies can be applied to medicine, healthcare, and life sciences. We also have questions around how do we quantify the utility of algorithms in quantum? What are the legal frameworks that are needed in quantum technology? That one is also having some attention. What is robust control in quantum technology? And how quantum technology can be used to test fundamental physics. And one last one about the limits of photonic quantum memories. Do not ask me anything about these questions. Daniel can answer all of your questions regarding that. But if you are interested in bioelectronics, we have a journal on bioelectronics, and these are the questions that we are asking there. So we have are bioelectronic devices safe and effective for neurohabilitation? What are the current limitations in bioelectronic sensors? How can we revolutionize medicine and healthcare using bioelectronic devices? And how can neuromorphic computing advance both biology and engineering? If you're interested in cyber-physical systems, we also have a journal in that area. We have a question on how do we engineer trustworthy digital twins? How should timing be considered in software execution for cyber-physical systems? And then another question on, these are just examples, we have others. How do we ensure safety in learning enables cyber-physical systems? So we've published the questions, and then now we invite authors to submit their work. So what can they submit? So think of it as pieces of the puzzle that kind of are going to build the picture that is addressing the question. So authors can submit results and analysis papers as well as impact papers. What are these? So a results paper, think of it as something akin to a research paper. So things like innovative methods that support experimental data, assessments of performance, single or multiple types of results, sets of results, I should say. And I know a lot of journals say this, but we really mean it. Null and negative results are very welcome. Analysis papers, again, are akin to a research paper, but this is either you're reanalyzing your data or analyzing someone else's data in a different way, or combining with new data. It can also be reviews of key materials, case studies in technologies, or for example, a horizon scanning of emerging technologies. And then finally, the impact paper is akin to a review paper, and that can be more of a perspective or a review. We are also hoping to include registry reports in the future. Especially, we have a few journals that are more in the health areas, and they are very keen to have that. So we're also going to do that soon-ish. Another thing that is very different with this journal is that remember when I talked about that it's not just the peer-reviewed type of content that should be considered for evaluation, that all types of output are important. So here's where our community side enters. So anything that is parallel in addition to your paper is also very welcome. So things like posters, presentations, data sets, some people have videos, some people have audio files, all of that, if it's relevant to the question that we've asked, and if it's academic, so it is curated content, we don't publish anything. So if it is curated and accepted by our editor, it goes to our research directions communities. And it does get a DOI, so it can be cited. So here's some examples of things that people have submitted to all of the journals on the community side. You can see there a report, you can see there a poster, there's a video, a beautiful video of a student explaining their project. There's industry reports, all sorts, huge data sets that didn't fit in your paper, for example. And then the Research Directions platform makes connections between these papers. So that makes every piece of the content connected and easily discovered. So I'll just show you a few examples. So in the first part, so can I do that? Yes. In this one, for example, you can see that there's one question and there's 3 community contents, 2 analysis papers published against that question. And in this one, for example, you can see here that someone submitted first community content and then cited that community content. So I think that was like a data set, and then someone submitted a paper against that data set. And then there's other types of maps that come about depending on the maps. You can also click on expand, and then you get all of the information of those contents, and that just makes it easier to navigate from the question to a results to an analysis paper, for example. I talked about transparency. So with all of our papers, we show how many connections they have. We publish our peer review reports. They can be anonymized. There are some reviewers that want to remain anonymous for various reasons. And of course, our metrics are always visible. Which journals exist in the program so far? So we have, as I mentioned before, bioelectronics, cyber-physical systems, and quantum technology. Those are more the engineer side of the portfolio. Then we also have some mixed ones, biotechnology design and mind closure and transitions. They are a bit of a mixed one. And then we have more the health side ones. So we have One Health, we have depression, and we have sleep psychology. They seem very disparate, but these were the communities that were willing to experiment with us, and we are still thinking of expanding the portfolio. As I've said before, they're all gold open access. We publish the content on acceptance. We do transparent peer review for results analysis impact papers, so that means we publish the peer review reports, anonymous or not. And the content in the community site is not peer reviewed, but it is curated and does get a DOI, so it can be citable. We have won a prize, so I can gloat about that. Okay, that was our user experience team that won the prize, and so we're proud of that. And then finally, I think I can just say how I can help as a publisher. So I tend to reply within 48 hours. I have templates for any of the peer review content. So if authors want to submit a paper, they can ask me for a template. I can get you in contact with the editor that will handle your paper before submission, so if to know what you're submitting is relevant. I can send submission advices. I can update you on how peer review is going. There's support through the whole process from submission to production, and we will promote and help you promote your content. So you may even be invited for webinars or podcast series in the future as an author if we choose your paper. And that's it. Any questions? Thank you.
Wow, what a warm applause for Dr. Monica Moniz, the Research Directions Program Manager and Publisher from Cambridge University Press. And there, Monica has been telling us about their new journal, Research Directions, with focus on the quantum technology theme. And this is the Science Show with Dr. Dada on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting from the city of Glasgow. Later on, we'll be hearing more from Monica. But first, let's take another music break. This time, we'll be listening to Wonder Banton, No Wahala. And we'll be right back. Yeah, that's a really groovy one, isn't it? That's No Wahala by Wonder Banton. He's a really, really talented Afrobeat musician from Nigeria. And you're welcome back to the Science Show with Dr. Dada. And we've been listening to Monica Moniz from Cambridge University Press, the Research Directions Program Manager and Publisher. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to listen to some of the discussions that took place after Monica's talk as a part of the question and answer. I think we'll listen to maybe 3 minutes or so of that, and we'll be right back.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question about what you said regarding the openness of your results, so your codes and things. So how does that kind of relate to IP protection, for example? So I mean, there are companies out there who could, use
and
these materials.
That's always a balance that we struggle with. So especially in certain areas, and biotechnology design is one of them, even the authors want to commercialize their own content. So how do you balance that, right? You can protect your content by, for example, putting a non-commercial license against your content, for example. You could submit your patent before you submit your results if you want to. That's another protection. But the best way to protect is doing it in a license that is free to read, but it prevents others from utilizing your content without your permission, which we allow to do.
Thank you.
So in the beginning, in the beginning, we meet with the advisory council and the executive editors, and we do brainstorming meetings about what questions we want to pose, and they're voted. And that's our first set. And then we started, and there were people from the community that wanted to ask their own questions. So they submitted it to us, and we have an advisory council that are different from the executive editors and the editorial board, and they help us decide by voting and by helping us shape the questions. Yeah.
I'll just add to that. So a lot of it's just generated through discussion. So going to meetings, going to workshops, talking to colleagues, and just trying to figure out what are the things that people want to work on. And we are very open to new questions. We've had questions like legal framework. That was just came out of the community. Healthcare that was submitted, which wasn't one of our initial ones.
That's right.
And we're always looking for expanding the range of the editorial board to cover areas which aren't originally represented. To start it off, it was heavily biased towards people who already knew each other, who already worked together, and knew of their work. But obviously, we know that's a very that's subject to just small world syndrome.
Yeah.
So we are actively trying to expand it beyond just who we already know.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where try to get a new journal off the ground, you have to start somewhere. But we are looking for questions which will draw in new communities, expand it beyond what we already cover. And I think we have quite a broad coverage at the moment, but obviously we don't pretend to know the whole field.
Yeah. And as Daniel.
Very good. That's all time will allow us to take from Monica's talk and the discussions that happened after that. But you'd have noticed comments from Daniel Oy. So Daniel Oy is the editor-in-chief of Research Direction's Quantum Technologies journal, which is very, very nice journal. And it's really nice to hear from Daniel Oy. Hopefully we'll get Daniel on a future episode of this show. He's an expert in quantum technologies, as you probably gathered. Great. So now we're going to take another music break. It's by the song we're going to listen to is by Asha, and it's entitled "Show Me Off," and we'll be right back. Yes, that's another beautiful song. So "Show Me Off" by Asha. And this is the Science Show with Dr. Dada on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting from the vibrant city of Glasgow. Very good. So now we're going to, the last part of today's show is going to be an interview with our guest, so Moniz from Cambridge University Press. And you'll get to know a little bit about Monica. And watch out, at the end of the interview, there's quite a light-hearted comparison of research journals and publishing houses to social media platforms. So let's listen in. So, thank you very much, Moniz, for giving us this fantastic talk, letting us know more about research directions. So, we'd like to know a little bit more about you, though. Would you care to tell us how you got into STEM and how that led you into this role?
Yes, absolutely. So, I've always wanted to be a biologist. That was what I wanted to do growing up. Everyone told me that there's no future in biology when I was growing up in Portugal, but I persisted and I went for it. So I did classically what you usually do. So I did my master's and my PhD and my postdoc, and every single of them was in a different country. So I was kept popping from different country to different country. And at some point, I was in a postdoc, and that was the first time that I wasn't sure about my next step.
Nice.
So I liked lab work, but I was a little bit tired of it. So just to kind of tell people, because they don't know, what I studied was marine microbiology. So I did a lot of field work and lab work, which I loved.
Exciting.
But at that point in time, I was just like, I wonder if there's anything else. I didn't want to do a complete shift to something without losing with all of what I had learned until then and my experience. So I kind of explored where I could transfer my skills, as people say. And talking to my colleagues, someone said, well, you usually help us a lot with our own papers. So have you considered publishing? Now, I didn't. I hadn't considered publishing, and then I started considering, so I applied. I have to say, I don't help people with their papers, but my background helps me a lot. So I am able to talk to different researchers about their research. I am able to talk to the editors and understand what they are requiring from the journal. And I became from micro-specialized in microbiology to I can talk about pretty much anything. Yes, I can talk about pretty much anything at a very high level now. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So it's really informative to know about that. The fact that, a career in STEM could lead you to publishing as well.
That's right, yeah. And we're always looking for people that have a background in science, in publishing.
Good, fantastic. So the other thing we wanted to ask about is regarding Cambridge University Press. And of course, the goal usually in science communication is engaging the public. So the research is not just for the consumption of researchers and scientists, but also for the general public.
Yeah.
So what efforts have been put into that by Cambridge University Press and
Yes.
research directions? Is that something that you're thinking
Yes,
about as well?
absolutely. So in general, but with the university press, we are trying to engage in different ways. So we have blogs where the authors explain in a maybe not so much as a simplified way, but in a different way, their science. But we also collaborate with people like you, actually, and doing podcasts where science communicators ask the authors to explain, again, in a different way, what the authors are interested in, what their outputs are.
That's fantastic. Great. Well, you're welcome on the Science Show at Jambo Radio to do that at any time. Fantastic. And lastly, just a question, just a little bit of a fun one. So assuming publishing companies are social media platforms.
Yeah.
So what social media platform would Research Directions be, or Cambridge University Press?
Well, Cambridge University Press and Research Directions would be very different ones.
Okay.
So Cambridge University Press is a very traditional publishing house. It's actually, people might not know, but it is the oldest publishing house in the world. So it might be something a bit more professional, something more like LinkedIn.
I see. Okay.
Research Directions, we're really trying to push the envelope and being the next big thing. So I'm hoping that it's a new type of social media that has not come about yet, that is not driven by commercial interests, and is also driven by the public.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Nice to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. It was really great having Moniz visit us in Glasgow, and it's really nice to hear all about the new journal, Research Directions, and especially the Quantum Technologies journal. Fantastic. Now, we've learned a lot today. We've talked about the scientific publishing landscape, we've talked about the new journal, and we've learned about how we can protect ourselves from misinformation when it comes to being informed scientifically. So with that, we'll call it a day, and that's a wrap on our week's edition of the show. We've explored quite a lot, and of course you can keep coming back to learn even more, to get to know more, whether you're an avid science enthusiast or just wanting to keep in touch when it comes to the latest breakthroughs and impacts on daily life in science. And of course, we'd like to hear from you. So any questions, thoughts, and comments you may have, feel free to put them in on our social media handles, and to email us info@jamboradio.co.uk. And also you can learn more and reach out to us at www.jamboradioscotland.co.uk. Also, we have a dedicated handle for the show, T-Science Show, on all platforms, so you can reach us there as well. And with that, we'll call it a day and thank everyone here at Jambo Radio. And until next week, we'll say stay curious.